Hey, Barb, thanks for joining me on a well-designed business today.
Thanks for having me, Luann. I appreciate it. Good to see you.
Yes, so I have to tell you, it's been a hot minute since I've had an interview with someone who specializes in SEO. We need you, girl. We
All right.
need you, girl, in this industry. We are seriously lacking my go to experts for SEO. So I don't know you yet. I don't know if you're going to be our go to expert. That remains to be seen. However, I have high hopes. So here's the thing. SEO. I'm going to tell you from my perspective, having run multiple businesses for, 4 decades. It's scary to invest in an SEO company because it feels like a lot of smoke and mirrors, to be plain English with you. You know what I mean? It feels like you're putting all this money into it and you have no idea if it's working. And it's so easy for somebody to say, well, I'm doing all my stuff. I'm not sure what the internet is doing, the algorithm or blah, 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 blah. And I mean, I even had a coaching client one time that was working with an SEO company. She had started maybe the month before I was working with her. And the first 3 months of the coaching, we're reviewing what's happening over here with all these thousands of dollars you're spending. And she was saying, well, they're saying it's too soon. It's too soon. And I'm thinking, okay, that's logical. And then it got to be 6 months. And, you know, finally it dawned on me and I felt bad that it took me that long to do this. But I'm like, where are the reports from the SEO company? And she was like, oh, and then she went and asked for them, and they said, we supply that at the end of the engagement. And I was like, wait, what you talking about, Willis? And so then I called my buddy, Nicole Heimer, who is knowledgeable. It's not her bread and butter, but she knows what she's doing and she knows knows what she's talking about. And she was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so then we went 10 guns at this SEO company, and it was an unfortunate experience. And she ended up paying 6 months and got ripped off. And so my thing is I've had positive experiences with SEO, but I always equate it to like going into a mechanic and saying, I've got a noise in my car. Like I brought my car in for an oil change just 3 weeks ago and I picked it up and it was $780. I'm like, I'm sorry. What kind of oil? He's like, oh, you needed brake pads and everything. And I'm like, and you just do that without asking? Oh, I called Vinny. I was like, my car, call me, but okay. So the point is, it's scary for us, Barb. I hate to tell you, but maybe you know that. Do you understand that about what you do? Or are you like, you're crazy? It's easy as pie. I'm so transparent. You shouldn't be worried.
No, I do the exact same thing. I wait 6 months and then I maybe give you a report. No, I'm just totally kidding, Luann. I completely get that because that is one of the things that pissed me off when I was in corporate. So I would sit there and I would actually be hiring out people for these things. And they would be like, okay, well, we're doing this, we're doing that. They'd give me a report and they're quote monitoring things. And I'm like, okay, but
Yes.
what does that mean? And there's still a lot, I think it's getting better. There's not as many companies like that anymore, but I think the thing that I get into is maybe over transparency because of that. There is a way, the people that you work with for SEO or content marketing, there is a way for them to show you what they're doing and be able to explain it so that it makes sense. So
Mm,
for example, if they're waiting for Google something to happen, they can explain what they've done specifically, and more importantly, why they're waiting and why
yeah.
it takes so long for it to happen. Because sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. We are at the mercy of the algorithm for the most part. However, the other flip side of that is that you have control over your content and you can repurpose and redistribute and help still get organic traffic that way too, not just through the search engines. So I think that it's getting better out there, but holding the people accountable definitely is one of the things that I think people, business owners, forget to do sometimes because it is such a black hole. Like you go down Google and
Hmm.
you're trying to figure out how to market my business, and you're going to get 20,000 different answers, and that's what's
Yeah.
really difficult, I think.
And I think too, it's, you know, when we hire experts and experts sound like what we think an expert sounds like, and it's completely out of our wheelhouse. It's funny too, because we just had a recent Power Talk Friday a month or so ago, a couple months ago in New Jersey, and Nicole Heimer, who is a brand strategist and a website developer, was one of our experts. And one of the partnership, there was a two designers that are partners in their business. They attended the event together. They were talking about the experience they had with hiring a marketing agency. So it
Hmm.
wasn't just SEO, it was all aspects of marketing. And they were saying it's been X amount of months and we're not feeling like anything was happening. And Nicole
Mm-hmm.
ran down for all of us in the room the things that, yes, this is what you're entitled to ask for.
Hmm.
Ask for reports on this, ask for the before and after on that. And sometimes we do need to know that and understand, because it's like I say all the time. It's why I love Peter Lang, the designer CPA, because so many times we'll ask our CPA a question and they'll be like, "Oh, don't worry about that." And you're just like, I'm not actually worried. I just would like to understand my money,
Right.
remember?
Yep.
Right? you know? And so it's funny how we can just tend to be like, "Oh, I don't need to know that. Okay, fine." But then you do finally get to be like, this chairman of the board, we're 3, 4 months down. We're like, wait a minute. No, we have to have some idea if this is working.
Right.
So I appreciate that you understand that, because
Hmm.
when the professional that we're working with understands that pain point, then typically, what you just said, you provide it from the beginning. Like, let me explain it to you as we're going along. You're not waiting for us to say, hey, what's working, what's not working, right, Barb?
Right. And I think one of the things that some agencies maybe forget is the business owner doesn't know the tech geek speak type stuff. So that's one thing that
Right.
I think I do very well, because I had to be able to, back in the day, had to explain it to my bosses. And that was why I needed to know so clearly what was going on, that I needed to be able to speak to it and say, okay, well, this is why you're spending this money. And here's how we're going to figure out what the return is on it. Because that's another thing with SEO and content marketing. It feels like there's no return because it doesn't feel like there's a tangible other side, but in fact there is. It's just a matter of
Yes.
setting things up in place. And so being able to translate, geeky terms of the SEO world into what this means on a daily basis, like for example keyword research, what does that even mean? It's
Right.
basically just finding phrases that people are typing into Google and looking for your service that you can help them with. So
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love it. Okay. So you have 5 ways to get more website traffic that doesn't include paying for ads, right? Because that's the whole thing.
yes.
And actually, let me just make sure I do understand this clearly. So, when we work with a professional like yourself and we pay for SEO, search engine optimization of our website, we're paying for that, but we're paying to make it happen organically, as opposed to paying for ads is paying for the ad to show up. So, you could do your own SEO, or like if you're a Nicole Heimer client, if you're a client of Nicole, she's going to do it for you in your website, but she's not going to one off do it just SEO. Like that's what you do. Your lane is come to me and I will do your website, right? Do SEO for your website. So am I clear on that? It's like, we can do our own SEO optimization, which, by the way, I don't know. That's like somebody trying to design their own home. Have fun at that, right?
That's right.
Like,
That's right.
duh, right, right. But we're still paying, quote unquote, to drive website traffic, but we're talking about trying to drive organic website traffic. Do I have the right understanding, Barb?
Correct. Yep. So you're setting
Okay.
up your website kind of like you're setting up a design plan. Like that is the basis of your website. And there's things that you do for the front end to be able to give that curb appeal or whatever. Like on Google search results, I always talk about that being the window into the home. Like you want to be like, oh my gosh, I need to see what's inside, and want to be able to
Ah,
click that to say, yep, this is the person that can give me the information that I'm looking for.
okay. Okay. So, what are some of the 5 ways that, because you listed there's 5 ways that we can drive traffic to our website? So we know we should have a professional SEO expert, but if we're going to DIY some of this, what are we talking about here?
Yep. So there's it's like 5 steps in order to basically what I'm calling website marketing starter kit. And it
Okay.
is an easy way to sort of just step into the SEO world. So you don't have to have any specific knowledge. This is something that everybody can do. And I feel like it's probably the simplest way to start. So it's using what I call a SWEET framework. I had to put my fun acronym with it. So it's SWEET, SWEET. And it stands for, I'll go through the letters and then I'll go through each one briefly. I won't get too techie and I won't get real long on you, but if you want me to further explain, let me know. I also tend to talk
Okay.
really fast when I start talking about this stuff. So just stop me whenever you need to. Okay.
Okay.
The S is select target keyword. So, and then W is work on a blog post. E is enhance with summaries. The second E is establish trust. And the T is tell the world. So basically what you're going to want to do is look for what people are searching for in and around your business. So that might not be your direct service. That might be, how do I move the chair so that I get sunlight most of the day? How, all these different things that maybe go in and around what the service is. And then you're going to write a blog post on it. And you're going to give them all the information that you can and be just super helpful on that one particular topic. And you're going to do things on the page. And the simplest terms, there's a ton of stuff. I have like actually a 12-point list, but the overview is making sure that you have that phrase that people are looking for in the main headline of the page. And in the first, I usually say 300, first 300 words or so, first 100 words, excuse me. And then every 300 words or so naturally. So inherently, you're talking about the subject is probably going to happen, but it's just kind of like a checkpoint reference to make sure that you are including the phrase specifically. And then you're going to want to include visual elements, which is super easy for your audience. And then put that phrase as the file name of the photo or the image, and then also use it in what's called image alt text. It's image alternative text. And this is specifically created mostly for accessibility purposes. So screen readers will actually read out what is the image alt text for that photo to describe what's in the photo. But if you can add your phrase naturally there, it's a great opportunity to put it in there. And then
Okay. Hang on. Okay.
Yep.
So tell me, first of all, so we're going to select it. I want to just go back and go through these a little bit more before you
Sure.
do establish trust and tell the world. So we're going to select a topic.
Mm-hmm.
Is that we're going to select a phrase or select a keyword, we're going to select a thing.
Yep.
So what are we talking? We're talking like, I always use like style the bookshelves. Okay. And by the way, for luxury interior designers, that is not a good phrase to use. We do not want to teach people to style bookshelves if we want to convert them to a $50,000 design fee, right? So what are we talking about? Can you think of a phrase that, like, as an example, and I don't care if it's our industry or a different industry, but just get me in the weeds so that somebody who wants to try and do this can actually do it.
So maybe a phrase that would be close to the industry off the top of my head is how to refurnish a dresser, or how to reuse a dresser in my office, or a lot of times it's probably going to be a how to, because people are looking on how to do things.
So that's why I wanted to talk about this, because that's a dilemma, because we don't really want the how to refurnish a dresser or how to style a bookcase. My example is going to attract the DIY client, right? They're going to attract the client who wants to basically YouTube how to refurnish a dresser. So we'd have to think about something. Maybe it's how to.
This is definitely where it gets tricky, right? And you're going to know your business better about the phrases. I'm definitely not a very good off the cuff phrase person. I definitely like to do the research behind it, but
and you would interview and you would research and everything. Okay, so then I shouldn't make you crazy, because you would need to spend time figuring out each person's industry and their niche. Okay,
yes,
so
absolutely.
all right, so then I'll tell you what. I just had an idea. So what's very big in our industry now is, and well, what's funny is it's on the cusp of being very big. It's been coming along 7 or 8 years now. It's getting more mainstream, but it still has miles to go. Is like sustainable design and bio biophilic design, right? So now your garden variety human is not going to be able to do enough research in order to create a biophilic design for themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, but now here's the thing. Biophilic design is probably not the biggest search word out there. Like if I'm
Correct.
really
Yeah.
interested in it, I might be, but maybe it's wellness design, or maybe it's design that enhances my physical health or something, right? Like, so
Mm-hmm.
in that lane, right? And this is what we're talking about now, right?
Yep. And I think that's where we get into what's called tangential content. So
Gotcha.
if you get a word that you want to get in front of and you want to show up for, such as that, and there's maybe not a lot of search volume happening, what you think about is the person who might be interested in that. And what do they like? What do they do that's very close to that, that you could write about and kind of weave that information together. So you write
Okay.
about things that are in and around your industry, but not directly related to, but that would interest the person that you're trying to get in front of with another search phrase or something else that they might be interested in. So that's how you kind of like pull that together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So to just connect some dots and make sure I'm on the right page. So for instance, maybe I'm a designer that is specializing in boutique healthcare design. Like I'm, my lane is dentist office, my lane is mammogram centers, my lane is possibly even yoga studios or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to do something, some kind of phrase that speaks to the person, that when they are a consumer of these things, these are the things that are important to them. So wellness is important to me, environment is important to me, air quality control is important to me, all of those things,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And then we figure out, like, now let's just make it easy for us. I don't think that biophilic design is probably the best phrase, because I think the garden variety, but let's pretend it is. Okay.
Yes.
Let's
Okay.
pretend it is, just because, obviously I don't know what I'm doing and you need more time to, to interview your prospective design client in order to really get in their brain what they're doing. But if we use biophilic design, now the thing is, the W is write a blog post. So we're going to
Mm-hmm.
talk about, an aspect of biophilic design, whatever it is. We're going to do a before and after. We're going to do the principles of it. We're going to do the research on it. We're going to whatever it is. And you're saying in the first 100 words, we're going to use the word biophilic design. And then every 300 words, we're going to repeat that. So we might call it a different thing. We might refer to wellness design here, or blah, 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 green design, or, whatever, but we're going to repeat the exact phrase that we're trying to go after. Once in the first 100 and every three. So if 1,000-word blog post, we're going to see this word 4 times.
That's correct. And that's just a general guideline. There is no, I need to put a little splat
Right?
or
If
like
it's
a
two
disclaimer
times
with
or whatever.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no rule of thumb from Google on this specifically. What this is just sort of a checkpoint list that I put together with copywriters that I
Yeah.
write with to help them kind of, people, because they like direction. So that kind of
Yeah.
helps them with what's going on.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, that's
helpful.
what I always say. You still have to be like, you have to put your thinking cap on. I can
Hmm.
tell you what to do, but if in the middle of doing it, it sounds stupid to you, then don't do it. So if
Exactly.
four
Yes.
times using the word feels forced, then
Yes.
use it 3 times or use it 2 times, right?
Absolutely.
So,
Hmm.
okay. I
That's
like
right.
that advice. Okay. And now we are going to, the third letter is enhance. So talk to me. So I've got my blog post written. Now I'm going to enhance it. Talk to me about that.
Yep. Enhance with summaries is probably one of the bigger ones. This is where I'm going to elaborate on the window thing, what I was talking about earlier. So when you go onto the page of Google and you type in biophilic design, so let's say I'm going to go in, what is biophilic design? And if I want my website to show up on that first page, I have to be so compelling that when it shows up on that page, I want to click on my website over somebody else's. So there's like 10 results that happen on the page. I'm not going to get into the whole AI thing right now and ads and overviews and all that stuff, but just generally speaking, there's 10 results on the page. And if there is somebody else that is writing about the exact same thing and yours is right next to them, you want yours to be like, oh my gosh, I have to click into this one. Like this is selling me on why I need to pick this result over somebody else's. So enhancing with summaries, that's your page title and your description. that shows in Google. So that one line is the page title, and the thing that you see underneath is the page description. Those inherently happen in most website systems. So you have to be very intentional about what you want to put there and change it from whatever defaults happen in your website. So you can change that and make it very specific. And I encourage people to also just really think about, okay, if you show up there, go type in the word that you're looking for, your service even, and see what shows up there. How can you make yours different to be like, oh, this website, this person, this service is probably going to have what I need, or this one looks a little bit different. I'm going to click that one. So it's a very intentional piece.
Okay, so I literally just Googled biophilic design while you were saying that, just because I
Okay.
have to understand this all the way. So the first thing, the only thing that came up is a sponsored post from thinkwood.com, and it says biophilic design lookbook. And then it says free PDF download. Biophilic design uses natural elements to boost occupant health, well-being, and productivity. And then there is a paragraph, and it says biophilic design is a concept used within the building industry to increase occupant connectivity to the natural environment through the use of nature, indirect nature, and space and place conditions. The next thing is a Wikipedia on biophilic design. And then there's people also ask. And then there are what it is and what is not. So, and these little paragraphs, so what it is and what is not, I'm getting October 20 to 2015. As I'm telling you, we're
Mm-hmm.
missing the boat on this. All right. And it's just like gives me two tiny sentences. That's this paragraph that we're talking about.
That's correct. Interestingly enough. So the very first one that you're looking at, the sponsored, is obviously the Google Ads. And then
Okay.
the one underneath that is what's called a featured snippet. And
Okay.
it is, how to explain this? It's pulled from the web page that Google thinks has the best answer. And so it
Oh, okay.
features a snippet from the web page right there.
Uh,
And they're really
okay.
hard to get, but you can get them. And these are very similar to what would be called, if you ever hear the word AI overviews, it's kind of
Yeah.
similar to that. And then, yeah, then you have your two showing up there. The people also ask is a great area because these are
Mm-hmm.
things that people are asking around the words biophilic design. So you know
Right.
what people are typing into Google, so they're trying to figure out like what's the concept, what are the five senses, what are the three principles. These are all things that you can write about in separate blog posts.
Right. Right.
Yep.
And so it's interesting because now we both have all the words. I didn't know the words either.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. But that's like part of what you would do. If I hired you and I was a designer that wanted to either lean into this or wanted to just feature as a service, you would start doing all this research. And in 5 seconds, you learn the types of things that are coming up. So because I just had to say that since I surprised you with the thing, I didn't want you to think that I expected you to know everything about every area.
No, that's
So,
fine.
okay.
That's fine.
So but now these little features, these little summaries that you're talking about, what
Hmm.
I don't understand right now, Barb, is are they coming from my website, and where I'm putting it on my website is by default what Google is showing. And so we have to look to see what Google is picking, and we have to go back and make sure those first few lines are catching us. Is that the point of what you're saying?
That's correct. And I have a little hack for you. And if you want to
Okay.
see how Google looks at your website, there's a very simple way to do it without any tools. You just go into Google and you type in site colon and your website address. So you do site, SITE colon, your domain name .com, .co, .biz, whatever it might be.
Oh, and then we get to see what Google sees.
That's correct. Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
It's
Very
fun.
good. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to have to do that. So that's interesting. Okay. So enhance with summaries. And here's the thing, I'm not going to go into how do I go into my website and enhance a summary. That's either my website developer or I'm sitting there and I've made my own website and I know how to do it.
Mhm.
But like for me, that's a definitely hi, Nicole. How do we do this? But if I know Nicole, it's already done. Right. Okay. And then the second E is establish trust.
Mhm.
So how do we go about doing that, Barb?
That is a great question. So Google looks at the trust and credibility of the website. It's called EAT. It's an acronym well, now there's two E's. It used to be EAT. Now it's EEAT. I think it's going to EEATT. I have to go back and see what they add. I think they added another one at some point, but basically what it means is, can people trust you? So you
Okay.
need to add things to your website that will encourage trust when somebody lands on it. And Google looks at these things. And while Google didn't say they use specific things necessarily, the industry has a standard of different things that kind of signal to Google that these are trustworthy things. Things as simple as like a contact page, an about page. If you
Yep.
don't have those two things, it's surprising how many people don't have that. Um,
Don't get me started, girl. Don't get me started. Go
yeah.
ahead.
So you have those things, even a bio on, like if you have a blog, which you should have a blog, a bio at the end of every blog post that's just standard just to put there, which you can template. You don't have to do manually every time, to show who you are and why people should trust you.
Oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
You see, you know what? I can, as soon as you say it, I'm like, oh, often I will see that when I Google something and I come up with the answer. And I've always associated that with a professional writer. Like, oh, they want their little
Oh.
thing there. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I mean? It never occurred to me that on our own websites, we should have that little thing I don't even know if we have that on any of our blog posts, but we probably, I don't know. I'll have to look. But that's interesting. So you're saying, that's a trust indicator to Google, is what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. Forget the garden variety human that's reading it. It's Google likes that.
That's correct. Yep. Yep. And you can
Mm,
do it in a way that works for both Google and for the reader. It's just usually,
yeah.
I mean, they're pretty standard, but it just helps give
Yeah.
a face and give a real person to the information, because there have been so many crap websites out there and spammy websites. And that's actually what Google's trying to fight against most recently, is all of these websites that keep coming up, that they write all these articles upon articles upon articles, but there's no real person behind it. And so by
Yeah.
adding a bio and adding your photo and adding real world things of you to your website really helps build that trust and that credibility, not with only Google, but the person reading it.
So, you know what's interesting about that is, with the whole AI insanity that's happening now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That that is interesting, right? Because there's AI out there searching, website after website after website in, like, 0.000 seconds to get us an answer. But what you're saying is that Google is setting itself up, that its searches are leaning more towards the things that have multiple markers, that it's a real person, with the contact page, the About Us page, and these bios at the end of blogs. Because you're right. Like, how is an AI bot supposed to know the difference of somebody that's, just creating AI articles and posting them out there, and not doing real, genuine content? And here is Google with their technology trying to figure out how to discern that. That's very interesting. That's
Yeah.
smart,
And
actually.
somebody will say, "Oh, well, there's these tools that can tell you and detect AI." They cannot yet. So the tools are still at the
Oh,
mercy of a lot of just learning and getting out there. So the
yeah.
AI content ones, I've tried a couple different ones, and they still kind of go back and forth about whether or not they're getting really good. I mean, so good. In fact, like some of the images, there's some tools out there now, they literally look real. And I've
I
been
know.
I've been struggling with the acceptance of it being just old school and like, okay, we got to do real human stuff, real human copywriters and everything. And I think that there's a place for everything at some point, but it's going
Mhm.
so fast. Like just yesterday, you couldn't use any of the tools for images. Now you definitely can.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny because what I often will do is, because I do use AI for writing a lot, but what I'll do is I will, like, I'll put like 5 chapters of my book in, or 3 or 2 chapters of my book in, and I'll be like, from this content, you know, get me a summary, blog post of this content or something like that. So it's like, there's nothing new in business, believe me. The
Right.
10 chapters in each of my books, it's business, we didn't invent it, okay? But it is my point of view on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it is the things that are important to me. So I'm consistently, me and my writers are putting my own content into the AI and saying, draw your blog post from this, draw your, writing or your whatever from this. And then I'm just not looking at the blank page. I still
Mm-hmm.
read it and look at it and go, okay, but I just need to not look at a blank page sometimes. You know what
Yep.
I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah.
okay. Awesome. Okay, so to build trust and signal to Google that we're a real person is at our contact page, our about you page, and then putting a brief bio with a picture of ourselves at the end of every blog post. Are there other little content ways, markers to let Google know that we're real?
I think that there are, I can't remember them off the top of my head. I had a whole list of them, but I would say those are the very top ones that we ourselves can do
Yeah.
without any help from anybody else.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Well, and these are, believe me, I tell you, 6 out of 10 people listening right now are not doing these four. So if
Mm-hmm.
you just make the improvement to these, I go
It'd be
out of my
huge. Yeah.
mind when I come to a website and there's no contact page. Absolutely
Mm-hmm.
makes me bonkers. Absolutely makes me bonkers. I'm like, or
Yep.
where they're located page. That is so common for interior designers to not put where they're located page. And it's a combination of I'm working out of my home. I don't want my home address on there, and
Oh,
we did
yeah. You
just
don't
learn
have
at the
to.
Power.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we also just learned at Power Talk Friday in Las Vegas recently. One of the designers said, or one of the experts told us, it might have been Shauna Lynn Simon, said that you can put it on, but tell Google to keep it private if you
Exactly.
actually don't want the world to know, but Google knows it's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's good for Google, but I have to tell you, nothing makes me crazier than when I go to an interior designer's website that I found through Instagram or whatever, and there's nothing on the site that tells me where their business is based out of. Makes me
Mm-hmm.
crazy. And I've had designers look at me and say, well, that's because I want people to know that I'll go anywhere. I'm like, awesome, but I don't want you if I don't know where you're from. Like, I have to know, am I looking at somebody in New Jersey or California? Because if I love your stuff and I'm in New Jersey, I might really want to have that conversation about what does it take for you to come to from California to do my work. I might, but I'm approaching that inquiry so much differently than if I know you're in New Jersey and I'm in New Jersey. You know what I mean? And I'm definitely not going to reach out if I don't know where you're from. It's like, nope, because I don't want to be in a situation where I'm not paying your airfare and your time and your energy to come from California to New Jersey. And I'm not going to waste my time in the conversation. And designers don't get it sometimes. I mean, lots do, thankfully.
Yeah.
But it's just context, right?
Right. And it does help. I mean, if you think about it and you go to a website, like you said, and you don't see where they're from, are they hiding something? Like, why won't they tell me where they are? And there's ways that you can say where you are and still say that you're available around the
Yeah.
world, available to travel. You can put it
Yeah.
in
Simple
your
line, will
portfolio.
travel.
Yeah, you can even put it in your portfolio. Like, let's say you live in New Jersey, but you did a home in California. Like, just put the California
Right.
home in there and say, "Hey, I just did this California home. Look at this," or something like that.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And all I want to know is the area, right? The
Right.
greater New York area, the greater Philadelphia area, the greater Minneapolis area. I just want to know the area.
Hmm.
Anyway, so these are some of my pet peeves, I have to say. Okay. And then, but I love these three things that we can do is make sure the contact page is on there, that our about you page is there, and that this bio, adding our bio to the end of every, I don't care if we have two blog posts, add it to the bio, right? Add the bio, doesn't matter.
Yes, exactly. You can do it automatically. And it just occurred to me too. The other thing that you might be able to do yourself is like those accredited badges that you get. So if you were sent an award, if you won an award, or even if you were on some other podcasts or you have some guest posts somewhere, or you were featured in a magazine, if you feature those logos and just say as seen in or featured in or something like that, that also adds some trust and credibility too.
Now, is that a trust and credibility factor for humans, which we get that it is, but is that also a trust and credibility factor for Google? Does Google understand, like, as seen in Better Homes and Gardens or as seen in, Dwell magazine? Does that get that too?
Probably more so if file name is done correctly, because it can't read images 100% like that. Like, it can read images, but maybe not logos. So if you use it to the advantage of having a phrase or maybe your core phrase of your entire website as the file name, that would be good. But of course, they can see the headlines as seen in, featured in. So that's going to be like like a signal that says, oh, they've been featured somewhere or something like that. So
Okay. So it's not necessarily going to be able to read the logo of where you're featured, but it's picking up the words that they've been featured. So it's just like a little baby credibility thing. But
yeah, exactly. Like all these things add up for sure. Like there's
yes,
no
yes,
one
yes.
thing, but
Right.
the and the badges too. You have the file name that you have, and then you also have the image alt text. So you could say now. Here's where I kind of like go against the grain because Google says that if with the image alt text, because it's mostly for accessibility, if there's no real reason to have words on explaining what it is, if it's just like a logo or something like that, you shouldn't put like crap words in there. But what I like to do is just say this is a logo when featured in. So at least I think about it like when they read the page out loud, what would I want to help that person understand what that image is if it was read out loud? And then I think about it like that.
So what you're saying is that alt text, is that what comes up if you're visually impaired? Is that what you're
Mhm.
saying? And okay. So we want it to be what, like, so it would be, this is the logo for Architectural Digest. Is that what we would say? Something like that?
I would, yes, because I'm thinking I don't want to describe the logo. That's not going to help anybody when they're
Gotcha.
going through the page. So I usually say
Right.
this logo is whatever.
Okay. Whereas the logo that we've got on here might just say logo dash 62581.
Right,
Like,
right.
right? Like that could be
Yeah.
the thing. Like we could have Forbes's logo or AD's logo on our website and we haven't renamed it. So we
Hmm.
want to go in and rename those alt text. That's interesting.
Yep.
But to think of it in the what the service it's supposed to be providing is so that a visually impaired person can know what it's supposed to be.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay. So we're not going to say, of course, this is even useful for anybody, but this is a swoop. This is a one line.
Right,
No, it's like
exactly.
this is the logo for Amazon. like
Yeah, you
right,
might as well just leave it blank at that point. If you can't find
right,
a
right,
natural way to say it, like I wouldn't do it in a spammy way, but if you can't
right.
find a natural way to say it, then I would leave it blank.
Okay. Okay. Awesome. Okay. And then the final thing is tell the world.
That's right.
So how are we doing that, Barb?
You are sharing your content with anybody and everybody and all the channels that you want to be on. So I usually start with saying, okay, I have this blog post, and depending on what channel that you are um, showing up on, you share that blog post on that channel and do it multiple um, variations in formats and also multiple times because just sharing it once is not going to bring people back to your website. You have to
Mm.
continually share your information and just redistribute it throughout time. And this is why it's important too with your blog posts to not do the trendy articles all the time. This is what's trending 2023. This is what's trending 2024. And then all of a sudden, the next thing you know, you're outdated. Yeah. You can, but you can't. Like, I feel like for as we run our business, we just don't have time to keep going back to older articles and refreshing them. So, if in the context of a bigger strategy, there is a purpose and a place for it, then great. But most times there's not. So, I would write something that's more evergreen and timeless. However, as I say this out loud, I realize who I'm talking to. There's a lot of trends going on. So, I think there's definitely something to be said about strategy and thinking about, okay, how can I stay relevant, but still be able to not have to go back and rethink all of the stuff I did last year or 2 years ago.
Mhm. Well, and I think most interior designers would actually say to you, Barb, that the best core quality of the value of an interior designer is not the trends. It is the elements that go into timeless design, right? It's, like I just was at the Encore Hotel in Vegas. Now, I have been going to the Encore in Vegas since it opened probably maybe 18 to 20 years ago. I keep saying I got to look it up how many it is. It is the exact same decor since I've been going. You walk
Mm-hmm.
into the suites, it is literally the same drapes, the same carpet, the same bedding, the same wallpaper, the same photo, artwork, everything. And the thing is, I now, after 20 years or whatever it is, I'm sort of like, okay, guys, Like, this is beautiful, but it's enough already. Like, we come twice a year for 20 years, like, but by contrast, someone on my extended team, social media person for my team, Stephanie Hamilton, went for the very first time. And she was like, oh my God, this place is gorgeous. And I'm like, it is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. Right. So the thing is, the hotel rooms at the Encore are a good study in timeless design. The color combinations don't date, the lines on the furniture, all the things. And so I do think that, to your point, there are lots of opportunities for interior designers to write blog posts that talk about the elements of timeless design that,
Mhm.
you know and what I love about that blog post is that, no matter what it is, it could be proportion and scale, it could be whatever it could be, right? you know, or like lighting or blah, blah, blah. It's
Mhm.
something that you can tell somebody that's an important thing, but you actually can't do it or learn it necessarily that easy. So it's not like how to hang a lamp. You know what I mean? How to hang a picture. That I can read the darn thing and figure it out. But if you tell me the elements of timeless design, I might be like, okay, but how do I do that? It's like, okay, I got to hire you for that. So
Mhm.
that's much better than the top 5 colors for, 2024, right?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
let Pantone do that. Let's their job, and Benjamin Moore,
Thank
Sherwin
you.
Williams.
Yes,
That's good.
please.
Let them do it. They should, because they are going to renew it every year.
Yeah.
Your point is, if you do the top 5 things of 2024, then in 25 and 28 and 20 and 30, as a small business owner, you got to remember to go back and refresh that blog post, which we're not going to do. We're not going to do.
Mhm.
Is your point,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. And so I also don't want to overlook what you said about keep putting the blog post out there again. So what are we talking about that? It's like, we're going to put it out in social channels. We're going to put it out on Pinterest and bring it back to our blog, our website or whatever. But
Mhm.
are we talking about like 3 times a year? Are we talking about once a month? Like, what are we talking about? Like you said, that little, like, well, don't be an idiot about it. Like, what's that line?
Yeah, that's going to vary. So I'm not going to try, I'm trying not to use my it depends, but it is
Yeah,
going to
yeah, yeah.
vary based off of how much content you put out and also the subject too. Sometimes a
Okay.
subject is so important that maybe you do want to share it on a monthly basis. Maybe another one is more quarterly. Maybe one is seasonal, but not necessarily annual. And then, so that would vary it up. And then I think the power of the blog post is that you can create so much content from one blog post. And you would have content for like one, I'm going to say the very minimum, if you have one blog post, just kind of normal size, you could probably have anywhere between 4 and 8 pieces of content, just at minimum, not even thinking through off top, but like different formats, different ways to say it. And then for the different channels, because they all have different formats. So,
Are you talking about like Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn?
mhm,
What are you talking about? The places to
yeah.
Pinterest, the places to repurpose it? Okay.
Yep, wherever the interior designer is hanging out, obviously Pinterest is probably a big one. But I also think that uh, I'll step in and just say a lot of times you want to just focus on one channel, get comfortable with that, and then bring them to the other channels. But being able to have that one piece, you can repurpose it into a post in Instagram. You could even do a YouTube video nowadays. You wouldn't even have to
Mhm.
put your face on there and just
Mhm.
and even do podcasts. I've had people do. I've seen it with when they read out loud the blog post as an audio podcast. Now, I feel like that doesn't necessarily translate the same way all the time. However, this person does it and they do a good job at it. So there's always a way to get more out of just one piece of content. And
Interesting.
I'm sure you know this, like it takes multiple touch points to get in front
Yes.
of your ideal client. So you want to stay top of mind as much as possible so that they're always, not always, that seems rash. They're seeing you a lot of times whenever they're thinking about whatever they're thinking about.
And the only other question I have is, let's say that in my industry, I know that most people, like, if I go back at my data and I'm like, it's really crazy. I've done 20 complete kitchen renovations in the last, 30 years, and 15 of them have signed on in January. Like that just seems like people get through the holidays and they're just like, okay, let's tear this kitchen up. Let's get it ready for the spring or whatever. Like I'm making totally something up, right? But if I write a blog post on, why you need, the mistakes that you make when you do a kitchen renovation, when you don't have a designer on the job, right? Like whatever the title it actually be.
Mm-hmm.
Am I redoing that every December, January, like I say every January to kind of get the new people that year that are doing that? And if that's what you're talking about, do I have to, I always call it fifth grade plagiarize. Do I have to plagiarize my own content and kind of just change up the wording a little so that Google isn't like, this is old news, is this, you know what I mean? Like I always felt like there was something about Google knows if it's been out there before and it will ding you if it's the exact thing. So we're plagiarizing our own work, but just putting it out every year in January because that's when we get our most inquiries for kitchens or something.
I love, love, love that you asked this question because I think this is a very confusing thing. So, what you technically want to do is refresh the existing blog post. So,
Uh-huh.
don't create a brand new one because what you are doing is, yes, you're cannibalizing, you are duplicating your content. But not only that, you're making it very difficult for Google to understand. There's probably the same similar core phrase that you're using. And
Mm-hmm.
then you're making it difficult for Google to understand, well, which page do I show? Obviously, probably more the newer one, but you have all of the history and the oomph, I guess, I don't know what to call it, from the
Yeah.
first one that you don't want to lose that. So you just want to refresh that original one. So let's say you go back and it's the next year, which I do recommend every year or 2 years to look back. And usually your analytics will show you if your performance is going down or if you even just
Oh,
have a feel that you do want to um, update it based off of some new information or some new trends or whatever. If you go back and change the blog post, simply changing it just a little bit probably won't do a whole ton. So I would encourage like looking at different formats, changing up the format maybe this time around, adding some new photos, maybe finding some quotes to put in there from people in the industry, or sharing some new images from some recent design work that they've done. And then the big kicker that I would like to stress is not to change the URL. So
okay.
whenever you sometimes your systems, when you change your headline, it might change your URL. I think most of the time it doesn't, but just to keep that in mind, because when you change the URL, you're essentially starting from scratch is what you're doing, which is also what happens when people redesign their websites. It's a huge issue that their organic traffic drops off because they have a
Mm.
whole new system, even though it's kind of the same to Google, it's brand new.
Okay, so just let me clarify here.
Okay.
So, for example, if you're a longtime listener of the podcast, way back in the beginning, I used to always talk about this one blog post that I wrote for WindowWorks on transom windows. And we call it, Nicole and I call it like the famous transom window post. First of all, it was probably one of the very first posts I ever did for WindowWorks. And it was back in, I want to say 2013 or 14, when I didn't have the slightest idea what I was doing, but I knew enough to know that we should have a blog post. So I wrote one. Okay. Well,
Excellent.
that crazy blog post has gotten more traffic to WindowWorks. It is bonkers. Okay. And it is so poorly done. Like when I'm telling you, I like took pictures off of the internet to use because I had no idea what I was doing. And I even used pictures that we had taken with a camera, not a good one. This was before, iPhones and stuff like that, and crappy pictures. But the content is valid. At that point, I had 30 years experience in window treatments, and I had a very specific point of view on transom windows, which I hate. Okay. And I literally just like stabbed the ground on, this is not the right way. And I was like, this is not the right way to do a transom window. This is the right way. And the first year that blog post was up, we probably got 30 inquiries from all over the world on, I saw your blog post on transom windows. Can I send you my pictures and you tell me what to do? And the thing was, we used to, like, one time I showed it when I finally years later was working with Nicole. She would, like, we were horrified at the quality, right? And she's like, but Lou, the damn thing's working. The analytics are still working
Don't
to it.
touch
You know what I mean? Right.
it.
She's like, don't touch when it's broken. So it's like highly embarrassing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But the thing is, so what you're saying is, if it's working, leave it be, no matter what. Right.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But if I had something that was like, okay, it used to work, it's not really working so more, it's sitting there. What I'm trying to understand is what is that zhuzh? So it's simply like it's got 5 images. I'm leaving all of the words the same. I'm putting new pictures in that are still relevant. And are you saying like maybe I've got 3 subheaders, just make the heading different? And or I'm just going to add, like you mentioned, quotes from industry people. But is all of the actual paragraph copy that I'm not messing around with? And that's like Google wants to see that staying the same?
So if nothing is wrong with the performance, I wouldn't change anything. But if you did want to refresh and it was going down, you can change anything you want on the page except for the URL.
Okay. 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 But leave, because if it had any kind of traffic at any point in time and it's still getting any kind of traffic at this point in time, I want to keep the URL, but I'm going to putz with the content to see if it boosts it back up into its thing. Okay. That
That's
makes
right.
sense.
Yep.
And there are just 2 or 3 different ways that I can putz with it. And that putzing can include rewording the paragraphs, rephrasing. And like I
Absolutely.
said, yeah, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I always say that because I can remember in 5th grade, opening up the Funk and Wagnall's encyclopedia and having to do a report on, I don't know, Davy Crockett and literally just rewriting the paragraphs. And I remember in 5th grade being aware enough to know, even my teacher has to know I'm doing this. And I was like, but I don't care.
Yeah, that's funny.
Like, it's like, okay, first paragraph is like this, just like say it backwards. Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay, don't do that,
I
but
know, right?
yes.
I know, I know. But you can do it to yourself. That's what I do to my
That's
own
true.
self.
That's
I'll
true.
take an
Yeah.
article I wrote for a magazine and I'll be like, all right, let's rewrite this, Luann, and make a solo show out of it.
Yeah.
Like I plagiarize myself all the time. But that's what you're saying to your point. Take the work that you did and repurpose it.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So okay, awesome. All right, so I love this. Now, before I let you go, give me 3 or 4, just give me, how do I work with you? If I'm like, that's all great, Barb, but I'm not doing this myself and I need to work with a professional on this. What is the process like? What can we expect if we reach out to you and how does it work?
So the easiest way is to just go to compassdigitalstrategies.com. There's a couple of resources on there too. You can get an SEO planner. And there's also, I'm actually renaming it, there's that suite framework in a PDF form. So you can literally go through and take a look and see if you have any questions about that. And just simply reach out to me. I do have an 8-week program that people can go into to kickstart their SEO. And then that
Mm,
funnels into a regular membership that is pretty nominal so that people have access to me to ongo their SEO efforts. Because contrary to belief, and I've changed my viewpoint on this over the years, I feel like SEO used to be a long-term thing. I now believe that it is not. I now believe that it is a one-time thing. It does take a little while to get set up, but really what happens is it funnels into content marketing. So you optimize once, maybe you come back and optimize based off of how much content you output, but you're really getting into content marketing and you're getting into content distribution and other types of marketing, not necessarily optimizing forever. You do want to go back and optimize, but optimizing in a sense by the word by itself is once. And then after
mm.
that, you're maintaining and updating and things like that. So
Interesting. So it sounds like these are these 2 things, the 8-week program that funnels into regular membership. This is if somebody is inclined that wants to do it themselves, quote unquote, with advice and guidance. Is that the
mm-hmm,
case? Is that what you're saying? That's unusual. And do you
mm-hmm.
also have done for you service where I'm like, Barb, I don't want to show up every week and do this with you. I just want to pay you to do it. Do you have both of those services available?
I do. I do find that a lot of people like to do the done with me or that the 8-week program more
Yeah.
because then they get to learn it and then
Yeah. And then
they
they go
would
off on their
consider
own.
either, yeah, or hire the company or hire me or hire somebody to do it, or even hire somebody on. I've had that people happen too, where people will hire on a virtual assistant or a marketing assistant and they will work on the SEO for that company.
Interesting. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think I've ever met anybody that teaches this side by side and then allows you to come like in that membership model to just keep coming in and working next to you to keep doing it themselves. That's interesting
Mm-hmm.
concept. And I you know what, I imagine you do very well with it because there are a lot of us that have marketing people, but it's sort of
Mm-hmm.
like, go learn how to do it the right way, you know?
Right, right. Yeah.
So,
Otherwise,
as
you're just
opposed to
throwing
wanting to
reports like, oh, yeah, that's
yeah, it's
right.
brutal. It's
Yeah.
brutal. It absolutely is. Well, that's awesome. And then, of course, we have the podcast. You have a podcast that we can listen to,
Yes.
Small Business Sweet Spot, right?
Yep,
For
absolutely. That goes out every
ongoing
week and
tips.
lots of action tips, digital marketing takeaways.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Well, thank you so much for coming today, Barb. I appreciate you. This was fun learning about your business model and learning the best tips for SEO that we can do on our own. Thanks tons.
Thanks for having me on. It was a great conversation.